Hello guys, this is Andrew again from iProps, and I thought I'd start off this video by giving you guys a little tour of what my desktop setup is like. So this is my Razer Tartarus keyboard. It has the same type of key switches as my Ornata keyboard on the right. I paid about $80 for it on Amazon. It is very light, lighter than what I expected, but it does not pose any problems for me. The weight does make it seem a bit cheap at times. The handrest is removable and it has two settings in my opinion. Big hands and small hands. I think I have small hands, I'm not sure. It fits my hand okay, but the spacebar button is just a bit too far away from my thumb, but I guess I'll just have to get used to it. I've had this keyboard a few months now. In my opinion, it's one of the best that I have ever used for typing and gaming. I paid about $80 for this on Amazon, but this was due to the fact that I ordered it before its release. It's quite heavy and has a much stronger build quality as compared to the Tartarus. It also comes with a great wrist rest, but in my opinion the wrist rest is a bit too thick. This is the Razer Lancehead mouse. I paid about $70 for it on Amazon. I previously used a Red Dragon Phoenix mouse, which is similar to this in design, but I decided to go with this because this mouse has onboard memory and I can access all my settings from one piece of software. It has some very nice contours on it and it has the exact size for my hand. This is my Huion tablet monitor. I paid about $8.50 for it on Amazon, and I'll put some links to it in the comment section. And now this is what my desktop setup looks like. I have it on a L-shaped desk. If I buy any equipment, I try to keep it black or dark because that's the theme I like. I have two monitors, but I really just use the 29-inch Dell and the Huion. Lastly, here are my two PCs. I use one for gaming and one for the workstation. The one for gaming is the one on the front, and the workstation the one in the back. Okay guys, so what I'm going to do is to try to cover as much of the Synapse 3 software as I can. So in order to get it, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to have to go to the Razer Synapse 3 website. I've pulled it up here, and if you scroll down, you can see a list of all the devices that the software supports. Now I'm not too sure, but I think there are some other pieces of hardware that this software doesn't support. I could be wrong, but you'll have to check your documentation or check the website to find out this for sure. Okay guys, so once you've installed the software to your system, you just go down here to the Show Hidden Icons palette, click on it, and the software should be this thing here that says Razer Central. So we'll click on it, and it has a button at the bottom here saying to launch Synapse. We'll click that button, and up comes the Razer Synapse homepage. Right now we're in the dashboard section of the menu, and this dashboard section here lists your devices attached to your computer. I have the Razer Ornata Chroma, the Lancehead, and the Tartarus. So all of these devices that I have attached to my system show up here. At the bottom of this, we have some modules, right? These are modules that work with this software in particular. We have something called Hue Chroma, Macro, and Beta Feedback. At the bottom here, we have some online services that you can go into and see what they are about. So now we're going to go into the module section of the Synapse software, and here are a list of all the installed modules. For any reason you want to delete any of these, you can just click the X and it will ask if you want to remove this module. Alright, so let's go back to the dashboard. On this menu up here, we'll see a list of some items here. These are the same as clicking these items at the bottom here. They will take you to the settings for these particular items. Okay, so let's start off with the keyboard settings. Let's just click it. Okay, so this page has an illustration of a keyboard here. If I hover over any of the keys, I will be able to select any one of them just by clicking on them. Right, so if I want to select the T key, I can click on the T key. What this means is that I can modify any of these keys on the keyboard and map them to something else on the keyboard itself. This gives us a list of all of the functions that we can change And if I decide like I want to map this T key to my Y key on my keyboard, I can do so by going into this keyboard function button here and just clicking on the rebind key too and click my Y key. So all I have to do now is just hit the save button and my T key will be remapped to my Y key, but I don't want to do that. So I'll just cancel out of this and close out of this. Up here we have a little drop down menu. This lists all the profiles for our keyboard. If I decide like I have created a whole new different set of mapping for my keys, let's say it's for Photoshop. I have certain function keys here that I have remapped and all of that stuff. What I can do is just click this button with the 3 dots and create a new profile by hitting the add button. So now I have 2 profiles, default and default 1. What I'll do is I'll remap all the keys that I need for working in Photoshop. Just change the name and rename it to Photoshop. So here I have a profile saved for Photoshop. I can just click the drop down menu and choose between that or the default setup. I don't really need to change any settings for my keyboard, so what I'll do is I'll go back to this example and just delete it just by clicking this red trash can. So we're back to our original default setting here, right, with no kind of mapping whatsoever on our keys. Also, if I click on the 3 dots here, we can also import a profile. So if, say, for some reason we don't have any internet connection and we're not connected to a cloud or anything like that, because all of the information for this is uploaded to a cloud, so you can access it from any other system if you want, just by logging in to your account. In a case where you don't have that facility, what you can do is just export your keyboard settings. Export, right? Choose a location to send your export to, right? And just hit save. I'll just cancel out of this. Alright, gaming mode. If you hit this drop down menu here, you will see that you have some settings that you can change here. So right now gaming mode for this keyboard is off, right? We can turn it to always on. When it's on always on, it disables the Windows key, so you can't really press it by mistake. So with that in mind, right, you can also disable Alt Tab or disable Alt F4. I really wouldn't do this because I really don't have any problems with turning keys off during gaming or anything like that. So I'll set it back to the default of off and we'll continue from here. Okay, we have another section here called Keyboard Properties. If I click on this Open Windows Keyboard Properties, it opens up the keyboard properties for Windows 10. So you can make some adjustments here if you want. I have no reason to do that, so I'll just cancel out of this. I think that we have enough control in this software to really disregard opening Windows keyboard properties. But for some reason, you may have to do that for whatever purpose you're using your keyboard for. Okay, so here we are now in our keyboard's lighting section. In this first area here, we have our brightness settings. Okay, so I've hooked up my webcam so that you can get a view of what is going on with my keyboard and Tartarus when I adjust some of these settings. Okay, so if I click this brightness switch here, my keyboard turns off, and if I click it again, it turns on. Okay, so you can see that this setting here works for each individual piece of hardware that you have attached to your system. Alright, so I'll turn it off again so you can see that my keyboard comes off, and I'll turn it on again. Right. Our next setting is switch off lighting. This is pretty self-explanatory. We can switch off our lighting when our display is turned off or when idle for how many minutes. We can determine the number of minutes by just changing this slider here. We can go up to 15 seconds or we can go right down to 1 second. Almost forgot, back in this brightness setting here, we can also dim our keyboard or we can increase the brightness of our keyboard. So if we have some pretty bright effects that we have created, we can always dim them down here instead of in the chroma settings over here. I have a way that I adjust my lighting settings in the chroma settings to make them not as vibrant so that they wouldn't be as distracting when you're working or doing anything else. At the bottom here we have something called Advanced Effects. These are the same effects that I create in the chroma tab. It's set on Cool Fire 1, which is one of my favorite settings, and I can change it around to some of my other settings just by clicking on it. I'll get this drop down menu and I can change it to any one of these settings I want. Okay, so in my advanced effects here, I'll change it from Cool Fire 1 just to show you a couple of them. I have one here called Burning Trees, right? Some flickering orange and green lights. I have one here called Cool Surfing. I have another one here called Multi-Pattern. So I'll set it back on Cool Fire. I've saved out 2 of these effects just to make sure that I have a copy of one because it's my favorite. Okay, so we have our Advanced Effects button up here. If I switch off this Advanced Effects button, you'll notice some funny stuff start to happen. Right now, my keyboard is set to a breathing effect. My Tartarus, let's go into the lighting section, is set to a fire effect. So we can actually have 2 different sets of effects applied to each piece of hardware just by going into the lighting tab of that particular piece of hardware. So I'll go back to my keyboard lighting now. So if I want to change my keyboard lighting to the same type of lighting as my Tartarus, I just have to change it to fire. Alright. So you can see that in this way you have a quick way of individually controlling each piece of hardware. Okay, so now I'll just switch it off. So we get back to my default Cool Fire effect, right? And if I click this button here, Chroma Studio, it will take me into these chroma settings here, but we'll get into that later. We don't have to get into that right now. Okay, right now what I'll do is I'll skip over the mouse and go to the keypad settings first. This is for my Razer Tartarus device. As you can see, we have the same type of setup as with the keyboard. Here I have created some profiles. I use this profile for gaming. If I select it, you will see that I have some map for Battlefield 1 in particular. So if I would like to use like the C key for something else in particular, what I'll do is I'll just click on it and the same dialog box comes up as with the keyboard, and I can go on keyboard function and map this key to, let's say, my tab key on my keyboard. But I don't want to do that because I have this thing set up properly right now, so I'll just cancel out of that and just cancel out of that. So under each profile now we have something called a key map. Let's say I have my gaming profile here. I can just click on these 3 dots here and add a new profile. So this can be a different set of buttons layout that I have for another game. This can be a new set of button layouts that I can make for any other game. If we click this icon on the left here, we will get a list of all the buttons that we have on our device right here. You can either click here to select a button that you want to change, or you can go over to this section here and just click a button and you'll be able to rebind it to whatever button you want on your keyboard. It's just another way of doing things. You can either work this way on the left here, or you can just close out all of this and just work on this illustration of your keypad right here, selecting and renaming. Another thing we can do is we can toggle console view, which gives us an illustration of all these other keys here, so we can see everything in a different way. So I'll just close out of that. there's something called hypershift, and this adds another layer of control where you can do another set of mapping for your device, doubling up the amount of remapping that you can do. So just by clicking here to hypershift, you can remap more keys. You see it turns orange, right? That means you have a second level of control over your mapping capabilities. So I'll just leave it on standard, and when I hover over each key, it just stays green. So as with the keyboard settings before, right, we have another keyboard properties section here. You can do the same and open up your Windows keyboard properties and mess with them over here. I'll just cancel out of this. Alright, let's go into the lighting section. Okay, the setup here is exactly the same as it is for the for your keyboard, so I really don't have to go over anything because there's nothing really different about it. It's the same. You can still go into here and save out your profiles to your desktop and all that stuff that I explained before. Let's just get out of here. Okay, so while I'm here back in the customize section of my Razer Tartarus, on my gaming setup here, I'll just rename this and call it Battlefield 1. So when I look at it, I can immediately see that this setting is for Battlefield 1. And I have a spare key map set here. And I'll keep this key map number 2 here in case I just need the keys default as they are for some purpose or the other, but I don't see why, because I'll just use my my keyboard anyway, you know. Okay, so in my workstation settings here for my Tartarus, I have mapped my keys for working with my Huion tablet. I'll post some links to some videos in the comment section below where you can see exactly how I work with that tablet. And what I have it set to here is all my shortcuts in Photoshop. So instead of my hand moving across the tablet to access the shortcut keys, I have everything programmed into my Tartarus. Okay, so I think what I'll do here is I'll just rename this default profile here to something I can better understand. I'll just rename it to default keyboard. So if there are any other profiles or anything like that I want to add, I can always add them in later. But I don't think I'll be doing anything like that because I like to work on my keyboard just as it is. I really don't like to change around stuff too much on my keyboard. Alright guys, so here we are in the mouse settings. I've saved this one for last because we have a lot more tabs here to go through. Alright, right here in my profile, I have one set up for my workstation and one set up for gaming. If I click on my gaming, you can see that I have some settings here for the game that I play. Alright, I'll just put it back on the workstation. So right here as before, we can add, import, rename, duplicate, export, and delete profiles however we want to. So we have the hypershift setting here that we can change to add another layer of buttons on top of the ones we already have. I don't need to do that. And at the bottom here, we have a section called mouse use. Now, my mouse is for right-handers or left-handers. And we can change that by either selecting any one of these buttons here, left-handed or right-handed. I'm a right-hander, so I'll leave it on right-handed. I don't really want to confuse myself and leave it on left-handed. Next to the profile, we have something here called onboard profiles. This mouse in particular saves your profile straight onto the mouse. The mouse has some kind of memory in it where you can save these work settings or gaming settings inside the mouse itself. So if I click on it, this dialog box here comes up and I have a view of all my profiles here. I can take one, let's say Lancehead Gaming, and just drag it into here and it will save it to the mouse. So I wanted to demonstrate this in real time so that you can see exactly. I never did this before, so you can see exactly, you know, how it works. So I'll take my workstation settings and just drag them into the mouse. So I can delete them if I want, or add some more profiles later on. I'll just close out of this. As before with the keyboard, if you prefer a different way of selecting your buttons that you want to change, you can select them over here also. Next up is the performance tab. In this section here, right, we can disable the view of the sensitivity stages, or we can turn them on. And in this sensitivity stages drop down here, we can actually decrease the amount of sensitivity stages we have available to us. So I can leave it at 2, or go up to 3, 4, or 5. So what this does is this increases the speed at which your mouse moves across the screen. If I set it up to 9,000, my mouse moves really fast across the screen. I have very limited control now. So what I'll do, I'll just set it back to stage 2, which I think is the default at 1850, and we'll move on from here. Okay, there's another setting at the bottom here called Enable XY. So let's say the X coordinates is the mouse moving left to right, and the Y coordinates are the mouse moving up or down. You can control with this how fast your mouse moves up or down in relation to how it moves from left to right. I don't want to change anything here, so I'll just turn it off. As before with the other peripherals, you can also open your Windows settings for your mouse and change around stuff here. So I'll just cancel out of this. This is the polling rate for the mouse. This changes the frequency of data updates for the mouse. I don't really mess with this. I just leave this at default how it is. Here we are in the lighting category for the mouse. It's practically the same thing as the keyboard and keypad I showed you before. So we really don't have to go through this stuff again, but it's right here if you want to make any modifications to those features. Alright, so here we are in the calibration settings for the mouse. This deals with, like, if you have a mouse pad or some Razer mouse pad, you can add a surface here, right? There are a list of types of Razer mouse pads here, right? So you can calibrate the mouse to the particular mouse pad that you own. Alright, well, I don't have a mouse pad, so I wouldn't be doing any calibrating today. Okay, Hue Chroma Integration. So if we go to the website here, what it says is make your gaming experience more immersive by linking your Philips Hue lights to Razer Chroma equipment. Your lights will mimic the in-game effect for a full room experience. So apparently when you purchase these lights that are compatible with this system, you will be able to link them to the Synapse software, and it will transfer your lighting experience to these lights that you have installed in your home. I don't have any kind of lighting like that in my home, so what this does, it probably scans your network to see if you have anything like that attached, maybe wirelessly, and you can synchronize it with the Razer Synapse software here. Okay, so this is the macro section where you can set up some macro shortcuts for your mouse. I wouldn't be going into this right now. There are a lot of resources out on YouTube. You know, you can check them out and see exactly what building a macro is about. Okay, so how this works basically is that you can add a macro here, go to record, and start recording your macro. You can assign a button to play it back at a later time. Okay guys, so here we are finally back in the Chroma section of the Synapse software. Right now, what you're seeing here is my cool fire effect that I created myself, just using the fire effect here. If you want to start from fresh and create a new effect, you can go to our favorite 3 buttons here. You can click on them and click add. This gives us a new effect called Chroma Effect 1, and we can rename this effect to my new effect. So it's added to your list of effects that you create. So we're now in my new effect, and it has a spectrum cycling. So if I save, right, you should see it update on my keyboard and Tartarus. So I have my webcam pointed at my keyboard and my Tartarus so you can actually see each effect and how it performs. So if for some reason I'd like to change this from spectrum cycling to something else, all I have to do is click these three dots here, and I can change it to a breathing effect, right, which just cycles two colors on and off from green to green. I'll just save it here so you can see it. We have a ripple effect here. I'll save it. So if I type, you can see that the colors ripple out based on this color diagram right here. So moving on, I'll change it to Starlight. Alright, I'll save it. We have some green colors appearing and disappearing over each key on all my devices. Alright, so static. Okay, this is just like one color. So there's really nothing much to say about the static effect. It's just like one color, and you can change it to any other color here just by clicking on these buttons, color buttons right here. So from static we can go to wave, and we have a wave effect here that moves across the screen from left to right, and the fire effect here, you can see that it colors the keys using colors from this color menu up here. So I'll select everything again, right, and I'll change it to static. I'll go on my color chart here and I'll click my white color and I'll change my static effect to white. So the easiest way to go about this is very simply, I'm trying not to get too complicated and have too much effects here. You can probably do that when you get more experience. So what I'll do now is I'll just select a portion of my keys here. I'll change them to yellow. I'll select another portion of my keys here. I'll change them to blue. I'll select these keys here. I'll change them to purple. Let me get a little fancy. I'll just change the top of my mouse here to orange, right, and I'll change the bottom of the mouse here to this cyan color. If I hit my save button here, everything should update. I haven't changed anything on my Tartarus yet, so let's just select these keys on top here, change them to red. We'll select these two last keys here and we'll change them to something like orange. So you can see that by having selections, you can change individual colors on your keyboard. This also works with any effects here that you apply to the effects layer. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to delete everything here and start from fresh. So in order to just clear out any selections, just turn off any colors on all the keys, we just select everything and we just hit the delete button, or we can hit this trash bin here, right, and it will clear out any colors that we had on our keys. So I'll reselect all my keys again. First I'll choose an orange color and then I'll go down to the white part of the color chart and just hit save. So I'd like to start by adding an effect on top of the static effect here, right, because the static effect really does nothing. If you prefer just to have a white setting for everything, you can just leave it like this, but I want to add in some colors. So I'll start with the wave effect. So in order to get some colors going across here, I'll just select everything and hit these color settings up here, and I'll choose this orange to yellow wave. Right, so now we have an orange to yellow wave going across all our devices. Now if you notice this wave effect here, it cancels out our static effect below. So in order to see our static effect below, right, what I'll do is I'll choose the yellow part of the wave, and there's a little button here for transparency. I'll just click this button here, and now we can see our white static background below the red wave. So I'll hit save so you can see it on my keyboard. Right, works as expected. So now what we can do is we can go back to our static effect here and just probably select a portion of keys here, so we can put a little yellow in here. And with our static effect selected here, we can just hit this yellow button here, and now we have a little yellow in our wave. So by using selections, we can change the colors on basically any part of our setup. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll delete our wave layer by right clicking, delete layer. I'll select our static layer here, and I'll just reselect our white selection here and save it out, and we get everything back to white. Okay, so on top of this static effect, I'm going to add a starlight effect. So there's nothing selected, so in the starlight effect wouldn't work until we've selected everything, and then we've added in a color. Let's add in green. So now we have an effect where we have different shades of green on each key over our static effect. And as before, we can go into our static effect, select a portion of the keyboard and change a color. So now we have some yellow on top of the white with the starlight effect on top. Actually, the yellow is not on top of the white. It's just part of the static effect, but it's just yellow. Okay, so now I'm going to select my static effect, change it back to white, save it out, right? And we're left with our starlight over the static. So right now I'm going to delete the starlight effect. Actually, you don't even have to delete the starlight effect. What we can just do is just click here and change it to whatever other effect I would like to use. So I want to show you the fire effect. If you notice, the fire effect, it cancels out our static effect below. So in order to see our static effect below, what we have to do is select everything, go to this bottom color here, and change it to the transparency. Alright, so now I'll save it out. So now we can actually see through the fire effect to our white static effect underneath. And to reinforce this, I'll just select these keys here and go into our static effect, reselect these keys, and I'll change them to yellow. So you can see that there is no limit to the amount of effects that we can accomplish in this chroma setting here. If we go back to our keyboard section here, so if we go to our lighting section here, right, you'll notice that if we take off our advanced effects, we can actually access all of the basic effects that are in our effects panel here. So we can do that in the keyboard settings too. Keeping it as simple as possible, I'll go back to our fire effect and I'll change this to wave. So we see now that with the wave effect, this also cancels out our static effect below. So in order to see our static effect below, we just go into our colors here, and I think I'll just select and choose basic colors. I'll choose the red to yellow, and what I'll do is I'll go into the colors here, go into the yellow color, and I'll put in a transparency on that. Save it. So right now we see we have a red going over our static effect with our row of yellow keys here at the bottom. So if I'd like to add in a little more yellow just to balance off our static effect here, I can select these keys at the top here, right, and with our static effect selected, just change them to yellow. Okay, let's get back to our wave effect and try to reset it to how it was by default. Forgot to select everything, make sure and select everything, because most of the time when you get into problems is because you selected part of something or just didn't select something at all. So I'll select everything and just change it to this color setting here, right? So we have our right to left or left to right scrolling of the colors. Okay, so this section here is the properties, right? We can change the speed at which the colors scroll across. I didn't save it. Okay, so now we have an accurate representation here of what's going on my keyboard. Sorry about that. So let's get back to it. So right now we have a speed of 50 and the colors are scrolling across the keyboard pretty fast. So we can take down the speed all the way down to 0. So it's practically just crawling across our keyboard. Select everything, 0, save. It's very, very slowly going across our keyboard. Alright, I'll set it back to 20, hit save, and it should update. Okay, this part here, this width, this changes the size of the gradient that is rippling across your devices. So we can make the gradient huge, so it covers more of your devices, right? Or we can make it real small, or at least much smaller, so it just covers a portion of our devices. But we can also do this in the color settings, right? So if I select everything, I go into my color settings and I take my yellow color stop and carry it up as high as I can. You see we just have a little bit of red over the yellow, and we can do the same in reverse. We can have more red and less yellow just by modifying where these stops are. So I'll get this right back down to where we had it before, hit save, and hopefully it should update. We have this pause option on here. It pauses the effect for about 5 seconds, right? It just fades it out so that we can see whatever effect that we have underneath. So we can see our static effect now. So I'll take off the pause to 0, save it out. We just try this pause back at 5, make it 2, alright, and save it. Alright, that's pretty cool. I can see I can do something with this. Let's get this back to 0, pause, save it. So down here at the angle, we have a degree wheel here where we can change the direction at which this effect goes. Right now it's going from left to right. So by doing a little math, 270 degrees will carry us in the opposite direction. Save. 0 degrees will carry us up. Save. Right, which is pretty cool in my opinion. And of course 90 degrees, 180 degrees, sorry, will carry us down. Save. We can even have some kind of a weird offset angle, so we can actually have it scrolling at an angle of 135 degrees. I'll set it back. No, I'll save first. So you can see it on my keyboard. I'll set it back to 0. Save. And here we go. So I will put this at 90 degrees. This is how it is, I think, by default. Left or right. Okay, right next to it here we have this split option here, right? If I select everything and I turn this split option on, it should split from the middle or something like that. I'm not too sure. Right, exactly. So you can see we have our colors going in different directions from left to right, right to left. Alright, I'll turn off the split option. Actually, I'll turn it back on and save so you can see it on my devices. Alright. Turn the split back off. Alright, playback settings. So if I select everything here and change this playback from automatic on start to on press, everything should disappear. Alright, if I save this, everything should disappear on my devices, and if I hit a key, it should start right after I press. So that's what this on press here means, and it will end never. It will just keep going on forever. Select my devices again and change this to end on press. Right, everything should disappear. If I save, it should update. So if I hit a key now, it should start. If I hit a key again, it should stop. I'll hit a key, start it back. I'll hit a key again, it stops. Right, so this also works, I think, with the mouse. If I hit a key on the mouse, it will start. If I hit a key again, it will stop. I mean, this could work like with combinations of stuff where you can have this turning on and off, and you have layers here in the layer effect manager stacked underneath, and you can see these effects when you press your key and turn it on and off. You know, so maybe that's a good thing. It could be really cool. Alright, so let me just touch on these icons here. This is your selection icon, of course. Right, so you can select your keys. This is something they call the pen, which lets you directly draw. I find it pretty useless in my opinion, because it really doesn't work too good. First of all, let me just delete this effect, because things will start to get pretty confusing. So I'll right click, delete this layer, select my static, select my devices here, and I'll change it to a white. Okay, pen tool now, so I'll select my pen tool. What I'll do is I'll go down here to this drop down menu, and I'll change the size to about 200 so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Let me make it a bit smaller. Let me see, 100, right. So as you can see, if I hover over my keys, they update, and I want to draw with an orange color. So I'll try drawing. So you can see it's just a bit wonky, you know. It really doesn't update too good, and in my opinion, it's quite useless. So the better thing for me is just to select the keys I want individually, right? And just change their colors, you know, that way, right? But having like the entire thing white, right, and just having like a couple keys orange, I'm not too sure if you can see, but an effect like that looks ridiculous in my opinion. So it doesn't look good. It's better to select a bunch of keys so you can make the color really pop and come out, right? It looks much better when you do it that way. You know, don't just select one or two keys and, you know, have them individually doing their own thing. Right, so I'll save it here. So that looks a little better. Right, we can even do these keys at the end here. Save. Right. So I'll zoom back out to, let's say, 50. Right. So this paint bucket tool here, right, if we select it, we can fill an entire selection with this tool. Fill these yellow, right? But in my opinion, the best tool really is just to select the keys that you want and just change the color here. We have a delete key here, so if we select everything, right, we can delete all the colors. I'll select back everything again and choose a white color. Sometimes you have to do it a couple times because the software is a little bit wonky at times. I'm sorry about that. That's not really my fault. Okay, so our quick selections button here. With our quick selections button, we can select everything. We can select the WASD keys. We can select the arrows, turn off the WASD keys, add some colors to the arrows, you know, stuff like that. But in my opinion, like I said, just use the selector and select exactly what you want. Right, these buttons at the bottom here, we can group our effects, add them into groups. For those of you who are accustomed to Photoshop, right, is the same thing as adding groups for layers. You can delete it, right? You can experiment with adding groups and all that stuff on your own. So this button here, this just duplicates the effect, right? If you're unsure of anything, like I said earlier, these little icons here with the question marks, they should give you some hints as to what these things really do. Okay, so let's create something a little crazy. Go back down here and choose a white effect. Right, this is my base static. Let's add a starlight on top of it. Select everything, don't forget, and we'll just add in a green color here. Right. I'll save it. What I'll do is I'll take down the intensity here, so it really doesn't overpower everything else too much. I'll save it, and I'll take down the speed here to slow. Save. Just to make sure it's at slow, I'll reselect everything, and with my starlight selected, I see it's really at slow. That's one way you can know if you've done something and something else is happening. You can just always select everything to double check, because if I click off of it, it goes back to medium because nothing is selected. If I select, right, these are the properties for our selections. So let's see what crazy stuff can we do. I think I'll add a crazy ripple on top of this. Right, so when I press the keys, I'll get this crazy colors emanating from whatever key that I press. So I'll just select everything. I'll go into my color and I'll select this multicolored rainbow pattern here. Right, so let me just check it on my screen. Right, it works here. I'll just save it out. Alright, the problem I have with this is the intensity is just way too high. So I'll go into my ripple settings here. I will select everything. This is just to give you a broad idea of exactly how to go about doing this. But you can come up with your own combination. But this is how I like to work. I like to take down the colors so they're not as bright, you know, just to give me a subtle effect. Right, so I'll just select this other tab here. Take it down, select the green, take it down, this, take it down, take all of these colors way down. Right. So as you can see, it's a more subtle effect, you know, that really doesn't overpower you when you're typing. This thing flashes in your face, you know. Because I'm not really into this kind of stuff. I wouldn't have this thing just flashing ridiculous amounts of colors all over the place while I'm working. I will just set it on something simple, you know, like my cool fire effect, you know, and if I want a little relaxation, I just look at my keyboard, you know. Okay guys, so I'd just lastly like to go over a couple things that I think that you should set up. So for the keyboard, keypad and mouse settings, I think that you should change the default settings that comes with the software, because it has some weird kind of naming convention like JAMZ whatever. So I think you should just rename these properly, right? And do that for the keypad. As you can see, I've done it for all my devices. I've renamed everything. Also, I've done it for my mouse profiles, and also in your profile settings, you can go to your whatever icon you have here and just go into view profile. I have renamed my profile and it seems to work better with my two computers, because before what was happening was that when I jump from my workstation to my gaming PC, I find that there would be a lot of weird profiles inside here, and the best way I think to avoid that when changing from one PC to the next is just to rename everything properly, and it should be fine from there. The next thing in the profile section that you can do is you can add a game. I don't have any games installed on this system because this is my workstation, so I'll have to do that on my gaming PC, which I already did, but it would only show up on my gaming PC. So on my gaming PC, I have my Tartarus and my Lancehead. I have one of their linked games as Battlefield 1 game. So anytime I start that game, it immediately chooses the correct key combinations on my devices. Also, I think that besides games, you can also add programs by clicking on this X here. Just go to add and you should see a list of some programs here. So if I want to have a certain set of keys bound to Google Chrome, I can do that. So I can also go here and browse my system to find Photoshop, and I can bind Photoshop to the settings on my Tartarus. So hopefully when Photoshop starts up, I should have the correct settings. So guys, I hope I demystified this software for you a bit, so you can make your way from here and create some fantastic effects for yourself. You can subscribe or like or do whatever you want if you like this video. If you have any comments, you can post them in the comment section below, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.